as I mentioned, it's not just desirable jobs, right? It's also like really undesirable jobs. There's a bunch of undesirable jobs that are male dominated, right? And it's like, okay, and for the undesirable jobs, why are they male dominated? Nobody wants to say, oh, because of sexism. Well, people say it's because, well, like women don't want to do those jobs. Like, why are they not working as roofers? Because they don't want to. Like, there are more men who are willing to do that, you know, where it's like, it's a crappy job, right? Crappy and dangerous. And so, like, you know, are we going to only say that about the bad jobs, and, you know, like, we're not going to say that about the other jobs? Because, like, there are, you know, you might think, oh, CEO is a really good job. Well, I mean, it's good in terms of getting paid, but it's also a really bad job in other ways. Like, just like you know, you have CEOs working 80 hours a week and stuff like that, right? So it is plausible to say also, like, not that many women want to do that thing because it's kind of crappy in certain respects, right? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I would push back a little bit just because part of your argument, you said domestic labor isn't considered, but I think if women are preferring a work-life balance and then they're going home and they're taking care of the family and that's not considered in the equation, that is kind of a problem between the wage gap. But also to deny that it doesn't exist like at all, that it's like what, like 99 to 100 or something, I feel like I'd push back on that just because I think like the Nobel Prize in economics last year was about like the gender wage gap, and I didn't read it, but I feel like there are historical factors that still impact women today, not so much in our first world, but definitely around the globe.
Yeah.
There are a lot of inequalities, and I wouldn't say that they're completely gone, and I don't really have like the empirical evidence to just kind of like pull up in front of me now, but I do feel like those have long-term impacts, especially because like women didn't even get the right to vote until like 100 years ago. And so even if like today women like me can show up to college and like have, I guess, an opportunity, it's like I could see the opposite where people hire men because it's the status quo. We can look and say, okay, we've never had a female president, and we could say that's because the candidates that have been chosen haven't been the best. But I don't think it's necessarily that women don't want these positions. I think it's probably a lot of factors, but I think it's kind of a big assumption just to like jump to the conclusion that there's not really a gap at all.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I want to address another thing you mentioned, like, if women want to spend more time with their kids, or like they have kids and they stay home with the kids for a while and then they go back to work, like after a few years or something like that, then they're going to have lower pay because they have fewer years of experience or something like that. So I think that's true, but I don't think that's an injustice. So like it's not like the patriarchy decided that women should be the ones who bear children. It's no, like nature decided that. So like, you know, you might think that that's cosmically unfair, but it's not an injustice because like people didn't impose that, right? And then, you know, well, if the women tend to stay home taking care of the children more often than men stay home taking care of the children. Well, that's probably because the women choose to do that. It's probably because the women have a greater desire to do that than the men do. And so like, it doesn't look to me like an injustice. Oh, I was going to mention another thing. Like there have been studies where they try to figure out if there's a bias against people based upon their name. Right, so you might have heard these. There's some studies where if you have they send out these resumes to see if people get callbacks. And the resumes there's like two versions of each resume, and one of them has like a black sounding name, one of them has a white sounding name. And the black sounding name gets fewer callbacks. Okay, about 2 percentage points fewer, so it's not a huge difference, but it is detectable. Okay, and then they did that with male versus female names, which you don't hear about as often. The reason you don't hear about that is that it doesn't feed into the progressive ideology, right? And they don't find a bias based on sex, and there might be a slight bias in favor of women, right? Where you put the female name and you're more either as likely or slightly more likely to get called.